This is Whitley Strieber. Welcome to Dreamland. Next week on Dreamland, and for the next 2 weeks, Danny and Brinkley and I talk together publicly for the first time. We've been friends for years, and we have put together what we believe is a beautiful, heartwarming, and uplifting Christmas special. Then psychic Marla Fries delves with Danny into the meaning of psychic power for our subscribers. Plus, on January the 31st, subscribers get to chat live with Danny and Brinkley. Today, a very special show featuring Ann Strieber and an Orbs expert. For those of you who attended the Dreamland Festival, you know there were a lot of photographs taken and that had orbs in them inside the buildings, outside the buildings, and especially quite a few around Ann Strieber. And she's been fascinated with them ever since. Let's listen to her interview an expert on orbs to try to find out once and for all what is going on.
Today I am talking to Antonia Scott Clark, who has written a fascinating book about something that we've all been very curious about for a long time, which are these strange orbs that show up in photographs, and people argue about them. Are they dust motes? And we recently posted a picture of me at the Dreamland Festival, and I was surrounded by orbs. So I'm going to ask Antonia today to tell us what she has discovered about orbs, and her book is called The Incredible Light Beings of the Cosmos. Are Orbs Intelligent Visitors from Another Universe? Antonia, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Anne. I sure would have liked to have seen that photo of you at the Dreamland Festival.
Well, you know what? I will email it to you. I will email you the link where you can see it after we're done talking.
Thank you.
Now, this is a fascinating book. I wanted to say real quickly that we once had some people on who said that they were pretty sure that orbs were spirits of the dead, and they would actually go and photograph them and video them in mausoleums, graveyards, places where murders had taken place. But you don't think that's the case. What's your theory, and how did you come to it?
Well, Anne, I've got several ideas of what they could be or would or might be. Spirits of the dead is certainly one of my possibilities, but there are many other ideas that I do have about these light orbs, light beings, as I like to call them, and they could range from anything from just simple blobs of intelligent or semi-intelligent plasma to aliens from another planet.
So aliens from another planet, but, well, orbs have been seen making crop circles, and there's a very famous, in the UK, and there's a very famous video of this, and people say, well, no, this was made in Photoshop, but our science reporter on this show, Linda Moulton Howe, wrote a book called Mysterious Lights and Crop Circles a few years ago, and she actually saw this with a group of people. She actually saw this being done. She saw light orbs moving over a field, and then the next day there was a crop circle. So the question is, are crop circles made from beings from other worlds? And if they're orbs, then maybe they are. What do you think about that?
Well, Anne, I visited the crop circles last year, and I stood in one of the biggest of the new editions. And I am convinced by their sheer size and complexity that they are not made here on this earth. I believe that they are made from some other intelligence from another place. I tried to make a connection myself between the orbs and the crop circles, but unfortunately I didn't get any photos of orbs myself at the crop circles that day. And believe me, I was trying. But I would need to go back, I think, and probably spend several days there.
Meditating in one or something.
And meditating and concentrating on the light beings out at the crop circles. Having said that, I did take a photograph, and there was a large fog in it, and two great big streaks of light going in, shooting skywards. out at the crop circles, and that picture is reproduced in my book.
Oh, I wanted to tell everyone there are wonderful photographs in here of orbs. I mean, the book's just full of photos. They're all black and white photos, and I certainly understand why, because color would have been much too expensive, but they're very clear. I think they're much clearer that way. And there's just photo after photo of orbs taken in all kinds of different places.
Yes, and my orbs are extremely big ones, you will see. They're not just tiny little things. They're very, very big ones, and I consistently photograph these very large orbs, and none of my photographs, of course, have been retouched in any way. And if anybody wants to see how these photographs are in full color, well, they can go on my website, and a lot of the photographs from the book are reproduced there.
Tell us the website.
Yes, it's www.incrediblelightbeings.com, and that's all one word.
Yes. Well, now, you have in here on page 65 a close-up of an orb, which is fast. It's all textured. This is the first time I've ever seen that. I think you're the only person who's ever done that.
That's a fantastic orb, and that particular orb you're speaking about also is extraordinary because it was taken in full daylight, and it was taken in my garden, and it's also an extraordinary photograph for another reason, because the orb is actually behind the leaf in the foreground of this photograph.
Oh, that's right, it is. I see that. I didn't realize that was a leaf.
Behind the leaf, yes, which means that it's not up against the camera lens, which means that we do have a spatial reference to this particular orb, and that rather debunks the debunkers, with their theory that these are spots on the camera lens or dust motes. And yes, that's a very big, bright, beautiful orb. It is also, as I did say, an orb taken in full daylight, which also disproves the theory which I'm reading in a lot of other books about orbs, that orbs only react to the flash of the camera.
Yes, I've heard that too.
Jogs them into life. I take a lot of daylight photographs of orbs.
Well, now, it's interesting. People are always looking for videos of UFOs that they can feel are real, and they have the same test for those. If it goes behind a tree and comes out the other side, or behind a mountain, then you know it hasn't been photoshopped.
Yes, exactly, and that's the same with orbs. I've got a very quick eye for them now, and I pick them up on TV programs, and if I'm lucky, I've recorded them, and it's the same thing. If they go behind a person's head or behind a pillar or a tree or something like that, it proves that the orb is in flight and moving and is not anything to do with the camera, such as light refraction or, light sunshine or anything like that, yes.
The video I was talking about earlier, they caught an image of an orb following one of them down the stairs. Have you ever had anything like that?
Well, I'm very ashamed of myself. I hate admitting it, but I've never tried videos. I haven't got a video, and I do say in my book, I promise I'll get a video, everybody, and really try this. It's a matter of not waiting for the budget to be able to budget to have the video. But most of my photographs have all been taken on still cameras.
And not expensive cameras or anything?
Yes, I've got a very nice Canon 10 megapixel digital camera, and that was not a cheap camera. But I think you can photograph orbs on any old camera. In fact, my first orb photos were taken on an old dusty old Nikon, old reflex camera using 200 ASA film. So that's another thing. I was photographing orbs before the advent of digital.
Now, didn't you say that you started noticing orbs when you were a child?
I said that I started noticing orbs about 10 years ago, I think. As a child, no, not particularly, but I've always had, since I was a child, a big attraction for anything to do with the paranormal.
I wonder if that opened you up to seeing orbs, because I sometimes think that it's a quantum idea, and we're just learning about quantum physics, but I sometimes think that we create our own realities in that way, and that if we are interested in what is called the paranormal, not a very good word for it, then we start experiencing the paranormal. What do you think about that?
Yes, I agree with that absolutely. And the rather strange thing here is that, my son, he also photographs orbs. Not quite with the quantity and consistency that I do, but he does definitely get some rather spectacular orbs, so it does seem to run in the family. And the deeper I got into it, the more exciting the whole thing became, and the more frequent the orbs, and the bigger the orbs, and the brighter the orbs. And as you will see right on the very last page of my book, voila, they turned up with writing in them.
With writing in it?
Did you get to the end of the book?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, I see it. Yes, that's right.
It's extraordinary. I mean, there is a message there. With that, I'm absolutely convinced they are here to carry a message.
Now, okay, I'm looking at these right now. We read a lot of books for this show, and I've read this book a while ago, so I didn't remember that, but I've turned right to it.
Yes.
Now, were you able to decipher this word? I can't really. It's clearly letters.
Yes, they're clearly letters, aren't they? Well, it was extraordinary because I took these in the Camargue, which is a very romantic part of France, in the south of France, right on the Mediterranean. And it's where the Crusades used to launch off to go to the Holy Land.
It looks like biblical writing, too. I mean, it looks like the kind of writing in old Bibles or something, writing style.
Yes,
that's interesting.
And I was actually with a cousin at the time, and we were in a church, and I took this photograph with this strange writing. We went right round the church to try and find something that might cause the writing, such as a reflection through a stained glass window. And there was absolutely nothing there. But when I got back to my hotel that night, I suddenly had the idea the writing might be in reverse. So I took out my makeup mirror, and to my stupefaction, I saw that it actually spelled my nickname, which is Tony, from Antonia. So it wrote out my name.
But it wrote it backwards, so you need to see it in the mirror.
Yes, yes, exactly. And it was obviously on the back side of the orb when the photograph was taken, shining through it, but it was in reverse. And when I held my mirror up to it, I could see that it actually was my name. And several people have looked at that, and they do agree it does look like Tony, Toni.
This is fascinating.
Which is short for Antonia.
Well, Tony or Antonia, we're going to have to take a break right now, but we'll be right back. This is fascinating.
Thank you, Anne.
You're listening to Whitley Strieber's Dreamland Online with guest host Anne Strieber.
Don't miss Dreamland next week when Whitley Strieber interviews Daniel Brinkley, and our subscribers will get to chat with him live.
Live chat is scheduled for January the 31st in the subscriber section.
We're back talking to Toni Scott Clark about her photographs of orbs and her wonderful book, The Incredible Light Beings of the Cosmos. Are Orbs intelligent visitors from another universe? And we've been talking about the orb she photographed with her name on it. You know, I think a lot of these type of things, you may not agree with me, are open to are kind of metaphors and that we're supposed to interpret. I wonder if reading it backwards isn't a message for you of some kind. I can't tell you what it might be.
Oh, well, that's certainly something to think about, and I'll hold on to that thought. And
have you got everything backwards?
Yes.
Do you think you've got everything backwards or something like that?
Perhaps I always had everything backwards. But no, I do think that maybe I just caught that particular orb and it was perhaps spinning and And it has back turned, and so the writing was shining through in reverse. And I've reproduced it in my book as it was photographed in reverse, and then flipped it through so you can read it in it's the right way. And you can see that it's Tony written there.
You know,
the writing looks like old Hebrew or something.
Oh, yes, that's it. It does look kind of Hebraic. Yes, it does.
Yes.
Yes, kind of square, boxy letters.
Yes.
And you also have pictures of, at least one picture of, well, you have several. You have a picture of some art with orbs in it, some ancient and some more modern. And you're pointing out that maybe halos were really orbs, because nobody really knows why people started painting halos or what they mean. But you seem to be suggesting that they might be orbs.
You see, the halo we believe is to be a Christian symbol,
yes,
really, of Christianity or sainthood. But in fact, what perhaps a lot of people don't realize is that the halo predates Christianity by many thousands of years and was actually depicted in Greek, Roman, and Buddhist sacred art. And also gods, emperors, and various other holy persons were represented with the circular aura around their head.
You know, our listeners do know this because one of our hosts is William Henry, and he is always, he talks about legends and myths in the past, and he's always pointing this out. The hieroglyphs have lots of halos in them. They're not quite in the same place that the medieval and Renaissance painters put them, but they're definitely there.
Yes, well, if you, go into old Egyptian mythology, or Egyptian history, you will see that the Ra, Hathor, and Isis had these cow horns.
Yes.
Carrying, some say it's the sun symbol, some say it's the moon symbol, but in fact it's circular, carried in cow horns. Now, take away the cow horns, and in fact you've got a halo on these ladies' heads, haven't you?
Well, I'm looking at one right now, and I wonder if the cow horns kind of mean that they are carrying that orb around with them.
It could well mean that, Anne. That's a very fascinating thought.
And since one of the ideas you posit in this book is that orbs are our guardian angels, maybe that's what they were talking about, too. What do you think?
Yes, I do. I think that the orbs are definitely intelligent beings, and I think the ones that, for me, the final proof came when those orbs turned up with the writing in them, and they had my name written in them, and it was strange. The book was actually practically on the press when this happened, and I was just in time to catch it, and I believe they knew that. And I believe that they wanted to give a more weighty argument for me and provide a little bit of, a bit more truth of depth, and which is when they showed up with the writing. And I do believe ultimately they could very well be part of our soul pool or our guardian spirits.
Well, so what would guardian angels be, though, if they weren't the dead? I mean, wouldn't they be our own relatives and friends coming around to make sure that we're all right?
Yes, I think that's the truth of it. I do believe that we all are issue of a soul pool. And your soul pool, Anne, would not be the same as my soul pool, but I believe that we have got our own soul group to which we really belong, and we're probably incarnated time and time again, drawing on the resources, if you like, of that soul group, and come back here to learn the lessons we need to do. And some of the photographs in my book have been, as you'll see, that photograph I call the lentil soup, which was of a huge group of orbs passing through like a great big cloud.
Yeah.
And idea just came to me, just like as telepathically. This is a soul pool, and that the orbs can break away from this and come and visit. And yes, I do believe that they possibly are our loved ones. And that was, by the time I finished the book, that was how I was feeling about it.
Interesting. Do you know, it's, I had a, kind of a, funny little near-death experience about 4 years ago, and ever since then I have received telepathic messages occasionally, which I call intuitions, and I think they should be listened to. Yes,
that's amazing, isn't it? Because I had the same. I had a near-death experience once. And
what was yours? What was yours?
Well, it was peritonitis, and I nearly died. I was very, very close to it, and I was in a coma for a week afterwards.
This was an accident, a car accident?
And I did have that going out of my body where I could see the operation taking place, and they were very worried about me. I could hear what they were saying, and he was telling to pump the anesthetic up and to do this and add chemicals, and I could hear it all and see it all, and I could see myself lying on the table. And I was trying to tell them I was going to be all right. I knew I was going to be all right, but they didn't think so. But maybe it's from that time that I have, developed a closer spiritual contact.
Well, that's very interesting. We're good friends with Danny Brinkley and his wife, and he's the one who wrote the first well-known near-death book, Saved by the Light.
Yes, I do believe I read that.
And everybody has. It's wonderful. And it's very interesting to hear to talk to somebody else who's had these experiences. It's also interesting to know that I know you're going to talk for subscribers with Whitley about some of your what might be called visitor experiences, and it's very interesting that something that isn't widely known is that many people who see what are called aliens see them with dead friends and relatives.
Oh, do they?
Yes, they do. This is very common. I read 500,000 letters, and so I know this. But, of course, it's the typical UFO literature doesn't tell us because it doesn't fit their scenarios.
Yes. Yes. That's amazing. How interesting.
Yeah.
That is fascinating.
Yeah. So you talk about having more paranormal experiences, and I noticed one wonderful one you talk about. It has to do with Uri Geller. Will you tell us that? This is fascinating.
Yes, I will. My friend Belinda Carlisle, who, as you know, wrote the foreword to the book, she was the one who encouraged me to write the book. Belinda's well known to Americans, I believe, as she was lead singer of the Go-Go's in the 80s.
She's a rock singer? A rock singer?
She's a rock singer, Belinda.
Wonderful group of friends there, okay.
She's a rock singer. She's got quite a high profile. And anyway, she is very into all this sort of thing. And she had seen my photographs of orbs, and she was the one who said, look, Antonia, you must get all this written down, because even if you get all these beautiful photographs in one place, they're safeguarded and recorded all. Even if you only write the book for yourself, do it. So I got going, but Belinda knows Uri Geller, though she and her husband have met him several times socially, and he's performed several little party tricks for them, mostly for their 14-year-old, as he was at the time, son. And she was telling me about this, and she suddenly stopped and said, Antonia, I best stop talking about him. You know he is the real deal. And every time I talk about Uri Geller, something weird happens.
And folks, we're going to take a break right now, and we're going to find out what weird thing happened when we get back.
You're listening to Whitley Strieber's Dreamland Online with guest host Ann Strieber.
Hi, this is Ann Strieber, and I'm back with Antonio. And Antonio, tell us what weird thing happened after you and your friend, the ex-rock star, were talking about Uri Geller.
Thank you. Yes, so after Belinda said she was very nervous, it always made her nervous talking about Uri Geller because weird things happen. I got home and imagine my surprise when I looked on my kitchen bench and there is a bent spoon. And not just bent, twisted and distorted on my kitchen bench. So
and you just left it there. It was a normal...
In America, don't you? And so a little bit later we were telling someone else about this weird thing that happened with the spoon. And Belinda said, Antonio, we better stop talking about him. You know it happened the last time. Sure enough, I went home and there was another spoon in my dining room this time, totally twisted and bent. And this happened 3 times, Anne, and so we discussed Uri Geller no more. But I have a lovely collection of Uri Geller spoons on display for anybody to look at in my dining room.
This is fascinating. One of our Dreamland hosts, psychic medium Marla Fries, holds cutlery bending sessions, I guess you'd call them, and it's quite amazing. It's very hard to do yourself. I mean, you can take a cheap fork, and bend it. And I used to be always a skeptic about this because I thought, well, all they do is they use these inexpensive stuff, and that's easy to bend. But it's not easy to twist. And I mean, the things they do, it's impossible to do those things.
It's certainly not easy to twist and bend, no.
And tie them all up in knots. It's like the crop circles.
Yes.
You can you can make a simple one, and some people do, but you can't make those intricate woven things.
No, I must say I was on the internet today looking at the crop circles for the beautiful new calendar that is coming out this year from England on the crop circles.
We sell that in our store.
Have you?
Yes, we sell.
You know the calendar.
Oh, yes, we sell it every year. It's by Lucy Pringle.
That's exactly right. And I've got Lucy Pringle photographs in my book because she very kindly allowed me to reproduce some of her photographs of crop circles in my book.
And Whitley does meditations with our subscribers.
They are too complex and they're too big. And the idea of 2 old fellas jumping around with a bit of string and a board to make these crop circles, their beauty and their complexity and the message they carry, it's just impossible. It is coming from somewhere else. Of that I'm convinced. And you have to go there and stand in them and feel the energy to know that they're just not of this world.
Well, I was going to say that Whitley, for our subscribers, does meditations with the crop circle photos.
Oh.
And a lot of people get a lot from this. You know, yes. And the BLT group, which is a group of serious scientists, have discovered that the real, quote unquote, crop circles are made with sudden bursts of high heat, but they don't know what sort of instrument's being used. And it's interesting, these orbs must be somehow sending out sudden waves of high heat. Have you ever felt any heat when you've been around them?
No, I can't say I have. I really can't say I have, but that is very interesting. And I will watch out for that in future, see if I have noticed a change of temperature.
When people say
I've never associated with them, though, I must say.
Yeah, when people say they see, when people who do ghost hunting say that they can tell there's a ghost around because the temperature lowers.
Yes.
And so but if these orbs are ghosts, it's very strange. There's something to do with the temperature, but I haven't figured out what it is yet.
No, well, that's interesting, and you've put me on track there to start thinking about temperature. I've never done that before, I must say. No.
Well, carry a thermometer with you when you take your camera?
Yes. Yes, I'll do that. But I do have a definite psychic knowledge when they are there.
Really?
Something just tells me. I just know they're there. Something does change because I know they're there. And if I grab my camera and start clicking, sure enough, they are there. And I can call them in. Definitely.
Or you can call them?
Yes, I can call them. Yes, definitely. I can call them and ask them to be present, and definitely. And also, I do believe that you will probably start photographing them now, or all your listeners will suddenly start photographing them, because I believe that I'm a sort of a link with them, and I think they want to be known. I think they want to be more widely known, and I think I'm like a medium. I'm a link between them and the populace in general, to bring their message to the populace in a very gentle, loving way. Because anybody who has read my book or talked to me about orbs suddenly starts photographing them. And
well, you know, the photo I was talking about myself on stage at our Dreamland Festival in June, surrounded by orbs, was sent in by one of our website readers.
Ah, was it?
Yes, it was. Yeah, well, neither of us took it.
Yes.
And they sent it to us. But you know what's interesting too is that I keep referring to UFOs and visitors because that's Whitley's expertise. But
of course.
You know, we've discovered that there are catalysts in that world, too. You speak of yourself as a catalyst. I remember when we would have people, when we had our cabin out in the woods where they kept appearing, we would have people say, well, I want to meet the visitors. And then sometimes they were sorry. But so what we would do is we would have groups of people up, and we would also invite people who had a lot of visitor experiences, because we noticed that they would act as kind of mediums or catalysts. And so that other people who usually didn't have these experiences could see them. So I think that there are people like this. You might even say you're carrying some kind of virus around, but whether it's a good or bad virus, I don't know.
I say in my book even, it's a contagion.
Yes.
Now, I can tell you too, Anne, about Whitley's book, Communion, right? I read that book. He wrote that a long time ago.
Communion, yes, about over 20 years ago, yes.
20 years ago, and I read it when it came out. Up in Switzerland I was, and I was skiing on a skiing holiday in Switzerland. I read Whitley's book, and after that I had 2 or 3 definite UFO sightings. Definite, positive, I'm sure they were.
Yes, yes.
And I felt, too, that he talks about visitations in the night. Suddenly I found I was having all these visitations that seemed to be visitors. I was waking up with cuts on my hand, and like I'd undergone little bits of minor surgery and things. And I felt that Whitley's book had been a catalyst for me to open up to this world.
Well, I think it cracks the cosmic egg.
I love it. Yes, cracks the cosmic egg. I love it. Yes, of course it does.
And I mean, if you somehow get shaken out of your everyday way of looking at the world,
yes,
then somehow you can see them. If you don't,
I think so. And
if you don't already know what's there and what you expect to see.
Mm-hmm. The thing about the orbs is they are there. I think my photography proves it. It's beyond doubt for me. And the fact is, you know, they are operating, obviously functioning as probably the UFOs do as well, on a different wavelength, and which our physical eyes and our physical ears can't actually pierce. And I draw the simile to a radio in my book, where the radio is out there broadcasting. We don't see the radio waves, but the radio is there. We just need to tune into the station. That's all we need to do is turn the knob. And I believe that that's what the orbs are, and probably UFOs. We just need to turn the right knobs, and we've got them.
Tune into the station is a good way of putting it. You know, a quantum physicist would probably say you've got to get into the right parallel universe. And many of them don't think you can get from one to another. But I think that this is what these things are, all these artifacts, visitors, ETs, whatever, orbs. I think they have learned to travel through those wormholes, and they are from some other parallel universe, and that could be death. Death could be a parallel universe.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally it could be. Absolutely, it's through the curtain, isn't it? And I wound up my book in the last chapter, second to last chapter, I call it Beyond the Curtain.
Yes.
Because I believe that this is just beyond the curtain. We are living in parallel universes, parallel worlds. And just as there are many, many parallel radio stations, there are one's putting out classical music, one's putting out heavy rock music, one's putting out, opera. They're all out there. But they're operating on different wavelengths.
Well, a quantum physicist would agree with you. I know because I've interviewed a number of them, even though I'm not a scientist. They're fun to talk to. But as quantum physicist would agree with you. And they even say that if we work at it, we may be able to learn how to get into another parallel universe. In other words, if we don't like the one we're in, if we don't like what's going on in our life, maybe if we function a certain way, act a certain way, they don't know how yet, we might be able to move into another one.
Yes, and I believe that this is the beginning. I think that we will learn to do this. I believe there are children being born now who are perhaps the children of the future who will learn to move into these other dimensions.
Some people call those indigo children.
No, I haven't read it, but I must. It's on my short list.
Well, I'm going to take a little break right now, and then we'll be right back. And when we get back, I want to tell you just very shortly about a few letters I read among those 500,000 letters that described orbs, and I'll ask you for your opinion on them, because I think here I've got an expert. I might as well get some info. This is Ann Strieber. We'll be right back.
This is Whitley Strieber's Dreamland. We go deeper.
This is Ann Strieber, and I'm talking with Antonia Scott Clark, author of Incredible Light Beings of the Cosmos, with the website IncredibleLightBeings.com. Am I right there?
You're right there, Anne. Yes, that's it.
And if you want to see some incredible photos of orbs, go to that website and pick up this book, because they are really incredible. And they're obviously, I just think you're just, they're just obviously following you around saying, hey, I'm here. I want to tell you.
I feel they're on my shoulder right now talking to you, and while I'm talking to you saying, good girl, go for it, carry the message.
Really? Really? You're hearing that?
Yes, I do. Yes, I think they want to be known. Definitely. We're moving into a new era, a new age of Aquarius, and these are perhaps the heralds of it. And there's so much we don't know, and there's so much that is poo-pooed by science today.
But not real science, Tony. Real scientists are open to this. You're talking about the medium level scientists, the real top scientists, the quantum physicists, the people at the top of their fields. They're open to it, I know, because I've talked to them, including we talked to Martin Rees, the astronomer royal in UK. Whitley interviewed him once, and he asked, Whitley said to himself, well, I'm not going to talk about UFOs. And Martin Rees said, well, let's talk about UFOs. So the top guys are not closed to this. It's the high school teacher level.
Yes, okay.
That is.
Yes. Well, that's amazing. Having said that, I've just this afternoon signed a book for a high school child who's taking orbs and photographing orbs consistently.
Wonderful.
And he found my book and he went out and bought it, and he tracked me down and got me signed for him today. And this is a very young person, 16-year-old boy, and he's photographing orbs consistently.
Well, it's interesting that one of the children who is seeing, I'd say teenagers, who is seeing having most incredible crop circle sightings in the Netherlands is, I think he's around 16.
Really?
Oh, yeah, and people know of him. Our science reporter interviewed him, and we also had Bert Jansen on, who's a crop circle expert who knows him. And I think these kids their minds are so much more open, and that's why, as we were talking about, they're seeing these things.
Yes. Yes, I do believe that perhaps it will be the next generation who really will pierce. But someone's got to carry the initial message, and this could be part of my job. I feel very, very proud and very honored, I believe, to have been chosen by them to advance this the awareness, really, is the word, isn't it?
Do you think they'll get mad at you if you do it wrong?
I think they're very gentle and very loving. I've never had anything horrible happen since the light beings have been in my life.
That's interesting. I know a lot of people speak about what we call the visitors as negative, evil. But I always notice that the people who do this are kind of negative themselves. I wonder if they're not just projecting.
Yes, I wonder. I wonder too. I wonder.
Some people are just obsessed with evil aliens, and I don't see this. I don't think they're good angels. I think they've got their own agenda, and we can't figure out what it is.
Yes.
But I think the orbs probably do too, and maybe they're one and the same thing. I don't know, but
I think they're connected.
Do you?
I'm sure. I don't know why, because I'm not a scientist, and I don't pretend to be, and I don't ever once claim in my book to state something without actually knowing it. I understand as the veracity of my book. I don't make wild claims that they're this, they're that, they're the other thing.
Oh, I don't like books like that. I never interview people like that.
It's just opening other people's awareness and getting them to accept that there is something out there happening and that we better sit up and take notice. I don't think that there's an evil agenda. I think we know about it by now, and I believe they're coming in a spirit of good and love.
Well, now, I wanted to tell you about a few letters I remember, many very well, and see if you have any comments on them. One was a woman wrote about how when she was young, she and her brother shared a bedroom, and they were probably about 1 year apart. And there were 2 cribs in the room. And she remembers waking up very early one morning because she heard her brother laughing, and she looked, and he was surrounded by multicolored balls of light. He couldn't talk yet.
Yes.
But he was laughing away because he was just surrounded, and they were all different colors. And I wondered, have you ever seen them like that?
Yes, I have, Anne, and I have photographed them like that. The children, the orbs love children, and they love animals. And they're very often to be found in the company of little babies. I think everybody has seen a baby lying in its crib, waving its little arms and legs and gurgling and smiling.
That's right.
It's something no one else can possibly see, and genuinely giggling and gurgling away. And I believe that they're seeing orbs, and I believe animals can see them too. And that the orbs love to come down and, like fairy godmothers, hang over the baby's crib and amuse the little children. Now, I've got one photograph, and it is a pity, you were right, about my book. It did go into black and white at the very, very last minute because of the cost. There were over 150 photographs in it. So because it was going to be so expensive to reproduce in full color, they just said, no, black and white. But I did have a photograph in the book of a child, a beautiful child, the son of an old school friend of mine. I should say the grandson of an old school friend of mine. And he had a beautiful pale green, a beautiful pink orb beside him. And they can change color, and I do believe they turn on pretty colors to entertain children and animals.
I wonder if the different colors mean different things, if we could make a study of that. You know, I bet that's true.
Yes, I do believe it probably is, and I do think that turning on pretty colors for children is is definitely one of the things that they can do, and I've seen them variously. Silver and gold and blue is common, and they have auras, and they, I've even seen a red orb, so that's very rare. But to interpret these colors, I haven't really got round to that.
But I mean, does a pink one, is that a being with a different message than a blue one?
Well, I think that the pink ones come into play with children and animals. And in the book, I've got lots of photographs of animals with orbs. And in the original photographs, they are all pink.
All pink?
They're all
I wonder if pink has to do with innocence.
Maybe it does.
In other words, it maybe if you're innocent, or maybe if you ought to get more innocent.
Yes, or pink and pale green, for example, which seem to be the colours which are favoured around children. Maybe they're the colours you'd give to a baby. Mm-hmm. You'd give a baby plastic toys, wouldn't you, in pale colours and pretty pinks and blues?
Well, pale green is like a young leaf, and
apple
of course the baby is
green.
young.
Yes.
Leaves get darker green as they get older.
Yes, maybe they do, but the most common colour is white. Without doubt, it's totally white.
Well, I want to tell you real quick about another letter I received. Was a man was walking along the beach, or sitting on the beach, I forget which, and he saw these were clear orbs, like clear balloons or like bubbles, but they weren't bubbles, coming out of the ocean.
Yes.
Have you ever heard of that?
Yes, I have. And anybody who's a marine diver, which is not me, but a marine diver, will probably report that they get perfect orbs underwater.
You mean with underwater cameras?
With underwater cameras, yes. Underwater photographers diving to photograph sea life. And very often, if you are watching a sea program on television, underwater program of sea life, you will see dozens of orbs floating by.
And these aren't the bubbles from their breathing apparatus?
No, I don't think, no, definitely not. No. There's no confusion, because the orbs have a look about them which couldn't be confused with air bubbles. And I can quite understand that the person who wrote to you saw them coming out from the sea. I could say, yes, I believe that they can probably do that. And he's a very lucky gentleman if he can see them with his naked eyes.
And not have to use a camera.
Who wrote to you, who saw them with her brother's crib, around her brother's crib. Several people have reported to me that they can see them. I personally can't, although I imagine I'm beginning to be able to. But personally, I can't really see them. Somebody read my book.
In other words, you just sense they're there, and then you point your camera at them, and you see them in the photo.
Yes, well, that's right. So the camera's, I'm using the camera as my eyes. But somebody read my book, and this was a hard-nosed American journalist, and he flew from LA to Sydney, and he read my book in flight, and wrote to me after and said, well, you're not going to believe this, Antonia, but by the time I arrived in Sydney, I was seeing orbs without the camera.
Oh.
So, yeah, and this is a guy that would just simply, just such a hard-nosed journalist. I don't think he'd make that up.
You know, very often people catch UFOs on film and video that they have not seen. And that's very interesting that both these things act the same way. There's something in our brains that's filtering them out. But the camera, of course, only catches reality.
The camera never lies.
Yes.
The camera never lies. And okay, there may be people who do put this stuff out as hoax. Frankly, I don't see the point. It's an awful lot of work to hoax this sort of stuff. But,
I think very little of this sort of thing is hoaxed. I think they just people claim this because they don't know what else to do about it. Listen, we have to close now, and we're having so much fun talking. I hate to tell you this.
Have we done our full show?
But as you say, the camera never lies. And I've got to tell you, people, the camera never lies. Incredible Light Beings of the Cosmos. The camera didn't lie for Antonia. It's a wonderful book. Be sure to get it. It was lovely talking to you.
It's been a great joy and a great honor being on your show, Anne. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you.
This is Whitley Strieber's Dreamland. Next up, Linda Moulton Howe.
Last week, Linda Moulton Howe took us to Ohio for one of the most extraordinary, down-to-earth reports about a high strangeness sighting event. I'll never forget it, and I'm sure you won't either. If you haven't listened to last week's Dreamland, do not miss it this week. More high strangeness as we go back to Erath County, Texas, the scene of so many UFO sightings over the past few months. And now somebody is speaking out. It's going to curl your hair. Last week we dropped teeth. This week we're curling hair. Linda Moulton Howe is our Emmy Award-winning science reporter. On her website, earthfiles.com, every day she brings you the facts others dare not. Here she is from Albuquerque, Linda Moulton Howe.
Thanks a lot, Whitley. And it was almost 1 year ago at the end of January 2008 that I flew to Texas to talk by myself with eye-to-eye eyewitnesses and see videotapes, photos, and sketches of the many unidentified aerial craft sightings reported that month over Stephenville, Dublin, Selden, and Glen Rose. That's a group of rural towns southwest of Dallas-Fort Worth. And one of the most respected eyewitnesses was Leroy Gayton, Erath County Constable for Precinct 2, officed in Dublin, a town of about 4,000 people, only 8 miles southwest of Stephenville. Stephenville is the larger Erath County seat with about 15,000 residents. Leroy Gayton himself had watched from his Dublin, Texas home as a disc-shaped object was spinning and, as Leroy put it, throwing off different colors in the sky. But the most dramatic incidents that he told me while I was there were the close-up encounters of 3 fellow police officers from Erath County between 7 to 7:30 p.m. on January 8, 2008. And that was the first well-publicized night that made national and international news after 36 people or more reported spinning lights jumping around in the sky, and even aerial craft that seemed to change shape, morphing in the sky. Leroy told me that none of the Erath County police officers would speak on the record because each was afraid of losing their job or public ridicule or both. Leroy told me he had also heard that someone in military authority wanted to see a dash cam video that the sheriff was holding from one of the officers' patrol cars. But when Stephenville reporter Angela Joyner finally was given a copy of the alleged dash cam video by the Erath County Sheriff's Office, the tape did not show any of the dramatic events described by the officers, leaving the question, what videotape went to Angela Joyner, and what videotape may never yet have been seen? Now, for the first time, I have been able to interview one of those police officers. He still wants to withhold his name to protect his identity and asked me to call him Greg. Here now is Erath County Police Officer Greg describing what he saw with his own eyes in downtown Stephenville, Texas.
It was January the 8th. I had just came on duty. I work a 12-hour shift from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., and I was driving toward the east on South Loop, which is a loop that loops around the city of Stephenville. I was starting to crest the top of a railroad overpass, and as I got to the top of that overpass, raised quite a bit. I can see, halfway across town from on top of the overpass. I was looking to my left toward the downtown Erath County Courthouse, and I saw a large rectangular black object just slowly moving toward the courthouse. I saw it for maybe 3 to 4 seconds. And then I, of course, went down the crest of the hill, and I thought to myself, well, that was a rather large, aircraft of some kind. I've never seen anything that low, moving that slow. And it concerned me for a minute. I thought, well, maybe we have a commercial airliner trying to land at our little airport that can't support that. So I went further down the South Loop and got to about Lillian Street, looked toward the courthouse again. I had a pretty good view. It's winter, it's January, there's no foliage on the trees. And I saw this large craft hovering by the courthouse, about 200 feet off the ground. I went further down to the City Park Bridge on South Loop, and it's a very, very large open area. I have an unobstructed view of the courthouse, and there was this craft hovering there. It had two large, headlights on a car. These headlights were about 35 feet in diameter. The brightness coming off of them was similar to a xenon headlight. I'm sure you've seen those. They were, I would say, a couple of 100 feet apart. The whole craft from the left to the right, I would call wingtip, was about 600 feet across, and it looked like it was further, is longer than that, longer back.
Mm-hmm. How high do you think this was above you?
Above me, I would say 200 feet.
So very close.
Now, as far as distance away from me, I would say a quarter of a mile or less.
Okay, so low, but at least a quarter of a mile away.
Yes.
And you are judging this enormous size of 600 feet in diameter and 35 feet diameter headlights.
Yes.
Compared to what around you gave you that judgment?
Well, the courthouse itself and the area that it was at, I could go back and go block for block and get a good measurement of the size of the thing. And to me, it looked like you could put 4 or 5 commercial aircraft wingtip to wingtip across the front of it, that large.
And at that point, is it completely stationary?
Yes, not moving. I reached over and grabbed my camera. I swiveled the head around, looked in my viewfinder. All I got was washout on the windshield and also the bracing on the window from the hood down to the dashboard. Mm-hmm. It was right in the way. I was in the left-hand lane, so I couldn't stop. There was cars behind me, cars beside me. I really wanted to stop and just turn my car facing it and film it, but I couldn't. It was too dangerous for me to do that. So I proceeded up to Graham Street and made a left. At Graham Street, when I turned, I'm looking directly at this craft. At this point, it starts turning up at a 35 to 40 degree angle off the left wingtip. It rises there for about maybe 3 seconds, and then it goes completely 90 degrees and starts moving away from me.
And if I understand, you're saying that this huge object pivoted from one wingtip up 45 degrees and then a full 90 degrees without the wingtip position moving.
Right, without it dipping low.
Incredible.
Yeah. And at this point, another light comes on in the center of the craft. So you have now, instead of the 2 headlights, you have 3 identical. And it starts pulling away. I reach up and grab my radar, swivel it up into the sky, turn it on, and I got a hit. It showed 27 miles per hour and accelerating. It got to about 33 miles per hour, and I lost my lock, which meant, it's moving so far away I can't get a good lock on it anymore. At this point, it accelerated very fast. It went all the way across town within 2 to 3 seconds. So we're talking 150 miles per hour, like that. And then it veered to the left in the 90-degree angle. It just veered a little to the left and just kept going. And it got out of range where I couldn't see it anymore. At this point, I grabbed my mic. I started to call it in. And then I realized, how's this going to sound on the radio? I'm basically a new officer. I haven't even worked there a year. I'm still on probation, and I didn't really know how my supervisors were going to take it. I knew I wasn't the only one that saw it. There's people in front of me. There's people behind me. I knew other people had just seen it. So I just put the mic back down. I didn't call it in. Later that evening, we met with some other officers in the area, and I asked them if they saw, this large craft lumbering around town. And one of the officers said, no, I didn't, but Officer Gayton saw something in Dublin. And that's, of course, when I got a hold of Constable Gayton, and we started, talking about it. And about a week later, I was at work, and one of the officers said, hey, I know you saw something. I said, yeah, I did. He said, there's two other officers here that saw it too. So he got me in touch with them. We all met. And we decided to do our own little, just a little investigation. One of the officers was at his house when he witnessed it. The other officer was going home from work. He gets off at 7. He drove directly underneath it, when it was about 200 feet off the ground, to the south of Stephenville, out in the county, on a farm and market road. The other officer was at home. He was in his backyard. He lives kind of up on a ridge. He said the craft was lower than him in a valley, and it started going up a ridge across from him. On top of this ridge was a telephone pole, and underneath the telephone pole was a pickup with its headlights on. As the craft went up the ridge, almost hitting the pole, he said it just barely cleared it. It went directly over that pickup. We've yet to find out who that is, by the way. But they had one fantastic view of this craft. But that officer saw the top of it. And that's where he got the drawing for the top of the craft. The other officer drove beneath it, and that's where he got the color and the what it looked like from underneath. Now, when I saw it, it was blacked out. It had some kind of cloaking capability. It was so blacked out, it was darker than the sky around it. And it gave, just a little bit of a silhouette. It had, and also when I saw it, it had two towers on the top, about 40 foot tall, 30 to 40 foot tall. They had strobe lights on top of them. And they sporadically strobed. And there was 3 towers underneath it hanging down, 30 to 40 foot tall. And they strobed white. Now, when I first saw this, they were strobing, like I said, sporadically. Then, after a minute, they completely stopped strobing, and the only thing you could see was on the very, very far wingtips, left and right, were 2 little red steady lights, and, of course, the big, massive headlights. And when it left, you could still see a silhouette of it, as it's leaving in the distance. And it was, blacked out, more or less.
Could you or any of the other 2 officers hear anything from this craft?
We heard no noise. I rolled down my window, and I didn't hear any noise. Of course, I had highway noise around me, but I heard no jet engines, no, roar of an airplane engine, nothing like that. The other 2 officers didn't hear any noise either. But they were able to see color. It had lit up its color. And also the officer that drove underneath it was so close, he said it had no rivets, but it had a texture like a large canvas-like texture to it with an olive green color.
No rivets, some kind of a canvas texture all over it, and was the color of olive drab?
The color, it's the color of the graphics I sent you. That is correct. And he said the canvas texture to him appeared to me metallic, a metal, but it had the rough pattern design.
And it is interesting that in Empire, Ohio, that case, the truck driver said that it looked like if you cracked open coal, you could see that kind of crystalline structure. I have talked with another security guard, and she drew for me what would be closer to canvas. And now you're saying that on January 8th, Above Stephenville was this gigantic object, also with a textured canvas-like surface.
Correct.
But metallic.
Right.
Now, since January, and we're talking on December 8th, so it's almost a year later, have you had anybody off the record from military or intelligence come to talk with you about what you saw?
No. Nobody's come forward. Nobody's talked to us.
Do you find that strange? I'm asking in the context of post 9/11, in a world where anything in the sky should be considered a possible national security threat to FEMA, and that this is so large and unidentified that you would think that every single one of you who were eyewitnesses in Stephenville or Dublin on January 8th, 2008, would be interviewed by top authority in FEMA.
Yeah, now that you put it that way, yeah, that does seem kind of odd. You know, if it's a military experimental craft of some kind, I don't see why they'd be flying it over a populated city. That certainly doesn't keep it secret anymore. If it's not, then it is of some sort of concern.
And is there any evidence anywhere on this planet that any nation is making something that is 600 feet in diameter and completely silent and able to stand still in the air?
Not that I know of.
Nor me. So it is truly a aerodynamic mystery, let alone what is the source.
Definitely.
And I am hoping to hear from the person in that pickup truck last January 8th, 2008, that Officer Gregg described as being right below the huge craft. If you are out there, and you can contact me at earthfiles@earthfiles.com, I would like to talk with you either on or off the record. And I have a news update that has not been generally reported at all, surprisingly. On November 18th, 2008, 1 week before Thanksgiving, between 7 and 7:30 p.m., back in Stephenville, Texas, a couple was driving and called 911 to report that a brightly lighted aerial object was pacing their car and seemed to be making aggressive movements toward them in their car. The wife was hysterical, recorded as hysterical, and Officer Gregg told me that he had received at least half a dozen other eyewitness reports from the November 18th encounters, all describing a similar kind of craft near Stephenville, a different kind of craft, not like the huge one over the Erath County Courthouse, and not like the glowing pod or the triangle in Ohio. Who, what, and why does all of this persist in the same cluster of towns about an hour northwest of Crawford, Texas, and the George Bush Ranch? Is there any connection, or is it just a coincidence geographically? And for those people since November 18th, 2008, living in the Stephenville region, who may also have encountered other aerial lights but are afraid to come forward, I am hoping that you will contact earthfiles@earthfiles.com, because there may be a great deal that is happening in the skies that would be very valuable for the general public to know. And I can always interview you, as I have done the officer tonight or today. I can interview you without using your real name or your real location. I stress this because I feel that there is so much that is happening in the skies, and when people don't share, the rest of us, I think, are weakened by not knowing. And Whitley, I find this description by this police officer to be one of the most extraordinary official descriptions of something that is outside anything that I know on Earth that is being built.
Well, Linda, I could not agree with you more. I think it is truly extraordinary and in a way disheartening, because we have these events taking place in our world, and yet no matter what happens, the lie by which most people in this world live continues. And I just have the feeling that the truth about this is central not only to the way the universe works and our understanding of it, but to our own meaning and our future as a species. I think that if we continue to deny this, the more we continue to deny it, the deeper the hole we are ending up in gets dug. That's how I feel.
And that's why I keep doing the work that I do at Earth Files and radio and television and books, and it's why you are doing Dreamland and books and the work that you're doing. I think that there are some of us who have been exposed enough to real, honest people who are dealing with phenomena that are affecting really the entire planet. But
right.
We have governments that, for reasons that are still not clear, are maintaining policies of denial in the interest of alleged national security. And I say there is no national security by any government that is built entirely on deception and lies.
Of course, unless it isn't them, unless it's being compelled from the outside. That's the thing that bothers me the most, frankly, Linda, is the idea that whoever's here is compelling them to silence. Now, that said, it bothers me, but I don't think it's true. I think what happened is this. I think that something occurred in 1947, and these things began flying around, and as we have discussed on this show before, President Truman, and I've discussed extensively with Frank Ficino, and now we have corroboration from the British Ministry of Defense a few weeks ago, we started shooting at them.
Right.
And I think that this is a disaster of absolutely enormous proportions. And we have been isolated here and are being looked upon as a kind of animal because of that.
And Whitley, the greatest irony that I feel right now is that in December of 2008 comes out in movie theaters in the United States and will soon be around the world, the remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still, the 1951 classic with Michael Rennie. And when you look at what was the bottom line of that story, and it was that you had Klaatu, an extraterrestrial from someplace else in the universe, coming in a craft with a very skilled robot named Gort, and that at the end of the film, after the demonstration, that they could bring down entire electromagnetic grids if necessary, that what Klaatu is doing is he warns the people of Earth that they can either abandon warfare and peacefully join with other nations or be destroyed. And at the very end of that film, Klaatu says, quote, "The decision rests with you." And then he and the robot Gort get into the silver disc and take off. What an extraordinary film to have come out in 1951, basically condemning war, condemning violence. And now, here we are in 2008, the United States is in two wars it doesn't know how to get out of, with all of us facing a very sticky, perhaps fragile future, both in global climate as well as warring issues. And this film is back out in December of 2008 with this same message. You are being warned. If you do not change your ways, you will be destroyed. The decision rests with you. It's possible, Whitley, and you suggested it, that underlying all of the last 60 years of interface, at least with UK and British and US governments, they have understood they were dealing with something that they called interplanetary. But they began to attack it when all along it may have been here originally to try to guide this planet away from atomic warfare.
Well, Linda, and we are getting closer and closer to atomic warfare. I have a book coming out in February called Critical Mass, which is a thriller about the danger of atomic terrorism. And we have a situation where there was recently a report, I believe, from Harvard saying eventually it's going to happen. And the president, the new president, has said it's the most serious terrorist threat there is. And it may happen, and I often wonder if an atomic weapon is blown up in the middle of a big city again on this planet, if that may mean that somebody steps in. But I got it bell clear from the visitors I encountered that if they have to step in, none of us, not one of us, is going to be happy with the result. It is going to be very, very hard unless we do this ourselves. And Linda, we have come to the end of the show. Today, we are just starting the Christmas season. Today is the 20th. And folks, I want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas from myself, Linda, Gort, Clay 2, and who knows who else.
Yes, Merry Christmas, everyone, in spite of the chaos.
In spite of everything. Next week, we're going to be talking to Danian Brinkley. Danny and I have been friends a long time, and we put together a Christmas and New Year's show for you that I think you're going to find uplifting, heartwarming, and very much
the video. But most of my photographs have all been taken on still cameras.
And not expensive cameras or anything.
Yes, I've got a very nice Canon 10-megapixel digital camera, and that was not a cheap camera. But I think you can photograph orbs on any old camera. In fact, my first orb photos were taken on an old, dusty old Nikon, old reflex camera using 200 ASA film. So that's another thing. I was photographing orbs before the advent of digital.
Now, didn't you say that you started noticing orbs when you were a child?
I said that I started noticing orbs about 10 years ago, I think. As a child, no, not particularly. But I've always had, since I was a child, a big attraction for anything to do with the paranormal.
I wonder if that opened you up to seeing orbs, because I sometimes think that it's a quantum idea, and we're just learning about quantum physics, but I sometimes think that we create our own realities in that way, and that if we are interested in what is called the paranormal, not a very good word for it, then we start experiencing the paranormal. What do you think about that?
Yes, I agree with that absolutely. And the rather strange thing here is that, my son, he also photographs orbs. Not quite with the quantity and consistency that I do, but he does definitely get some rather spectacular orbs, so it does seem to run in the family. And the deeper I got into it, the more exciting the whole thing became, and the more frequent the orbs, and the bigger the orbs, and the brighter the orbs. And as you will see right on the very last page of my book, voila, they turned up with writing in them.
With writing in it?
Did you get to the end of the book?
Oh, yes, yep.
This photograph.
Oh, that's right, it is. I see that. I didn't realize that was a leaf.
It's a leaf, yes, which means that it's not up against the camera lens, which means that we do have a spatial reference to this particular orb, and that rather debunks the debunkers, with their theory that these are spots on the camera lens or dust motes. And yes, that's a very big, bright, beautiful orb. It is also, as I did say, an orb taken in full daylight, which also disproves the theory which I'm reading in a lot of other books about orbs, that orbs only react to the flash of the camera.
Yes, I've heard that too.
Jogs them into life. I take a lot of daylight photographs of orbs.
Well, now, it's interesting. People are always looking for videos of UFOs that they can feel are real. And they have the same test for those. If it goes behind a tree and comes out the other side, or behind a mountain, then you know it hasn't been photoshopped.
Yes, exactly. And that's the same with orbs. I've got a very quick eye for them now, and I pick them up on TV programs. And if I'm lucky, I've recorded them. And it's the same thing. If they go behind a person's head or behind a pillar or a tree or something like that, it proves that the orb is in flight and moving and is not anything to do with the camera, such as light refraction or, light, sunshine or anything like that. Yes.
You know, the video I was talking about earlier, they caught an image of an orb following one of them down the stairs. Have you ever had anything like that?
Well, I'm very ashamed of myself. I hate admitting it, but I've never tried videos. I haven't got a video, and I do say in my book, I promise I'll get a video, everybody, and really try this. It's a matter of not waiting for the budget to be able to budget to have everybody spend several days there.
Meditating in one or something.
And meditating and concentrating on the light beings out at the crop circles. Having said that, I did take a photograph, and there was a large fog in it, and two great big streaks of light going in, shooting skywards out at the crop circles, and that picture is reproduced in my book.
Oh, I wanted to tell everyone there are wonderful photographs in here of orbs. I mean, the book's just full of photos. They're all black and white photos, and I certainly understand why, because color would have been much too expensive, but they're very clear. I think they're much clearer that way. And there's just photo after photo after photo of orbs taken in all kinds of different places.
Yes, and my orbs are extremely big ones, you will see. They're not just tiny little things. They're very, very big ones, and I consistently photograph these very large orbs, and none of my photographs, of course, have been retouched in any way. And if anybody wants to see how these photographs are in full color, well, they can go on my website, and a lot of the photographs from the book are reproduced there.
Tell us the website.
Yes, it's www.incrediblelightbeings.com, and that's all one word.
Yes. Well, now, you have in here on page 65 a close-up of an orb, which is fast. It's all textured. This is the first time I've ever seen that. I think you're the only person who's ever done that.
That's a fantastic orb, and that particular orb you're speaking about also is extraordinary because it was taken in full daylight, and it was taken in my garden, and it's also an extraordinary photograph for another reason, because the orb is actually behind the leaf in the foreground of the...
This is Whitley Strieber. Welcome to Dreamland. Next week on Dreamland, and for the next 2 weeks, Danian Brinkley and I talk together publicly for the first time. We've been friends for years, and we have put together what we believe is a beautiful, heartwarming, and uplifting Christmas special. Then psychic Marla Fries delves with Danian into the meaning of psychic power for our subscribers. Plus, on January the 31st, subscribers get to chat live with Danian Brinkley. Today, a very special show featuring Ann Strieber and an orbs expert. For those of you who attended the Dreamland Festival, you know there were a lot of photographs taken and that had orbs in them inside the buildings, outside the buildings, and especially quite a few around Ann Strieber, and she's been fascinated with them ever since. Let's listen to her interview an expert on orbs to try to find out once and for all what is going on.
Today I am talking to Antonia Scott Clark, who has written a fascinating book about something that we've all been very curious about for a long time, which are these strange orbs that show up in photographs, and people argue about them. Are they dust motes? And we recently posted a picture of me at the Dreamland Festival, and I was surrounded by orbs. So I'm going to ask Antonia today to tell us what she has discovered about orbs, and her book is called The Incredible Light Beings of the Cosmos. Are Orbs Intelligent Visitors from Another Universe? Antonia, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Anne. I sure would have liked to have seen that photo of you at the Dreamland Festival.
Well, you know what? I will email it to you. I will
I'd
email
love to
you the
see
link
that.
where you can see it after we're done talking.
Thank you.
Now, this is a fascinating book. I wanted to say real quickly that we once had some people on who said that they were pretty sure that orbs were spirits of the dead, and they would actually go and photograph them and video them in mausoleums, graveyards, places where murders had taken place. But you don't think that's the case. What's your theory, and how did you come to it?
Well, Anne, I have I've got several ideas of what they could be or would or might be. Spirits of the dead is certainly one of my possibilities, but there are many other ideas that I do have about these light orbs, light beings, as I like to call them, and they could range from anything from just simple blobs of intelligent or semi-intelligent plasma to aliens from another planet.
So aliens from another planet, but orbs have been seen making crop circles, and there's a very famous in the UK, and there's a very famous video of this, and people say, well, no, this was made in Photoshop, but our science reporter on this show, Linda Moulton Howe, wrote a book called Mysterious Lights and Crop Circles a few years ago, and she actually saw this with a group of people. She actually saw this being done. She saw light orbs moving over a field, and then the next day, there was a crop circle. So the question is, are crop circles made from beings from other worlds? And if they're orbs, then maybe they are. What do you think about that?
Well, Anne, I visited the crop circles last year, and I stood in one of the biggest of the new editions. And I am convinced by their sheer size and complexity that they are not made here on this earth. I believe that they are made from some other intelligence from another place. I tried to make a connection myself between the orbs and the crop circles, but unfortunately I didn't get any photos of orbs myself at the crop circles that day, and believe me, I was trying. But I would need to go back, I think, and probably